When a young woman agrees to look after her neighbor's 4 cats while they're away on holiday, she thinks she knows the house's strange quirks, the footsteps, the flickering lights, the uneasy stillness. But this time, the sounds coming from the basement aren't part of the usual hauntings, and what she finds watching her from the shadows isn't human at all. Turn off the lights, listen closely. Sometimes the things we care for are the ones that watch us back. Let's start the story. My arrangement with my neighbors had settled into a comfortable, if unusual, routine. They were a gentle, middle-aged couple who, without fail, would holiday abroad once or twice a year. Their departure was my cue. I would become the caretaker of their home and their 4 beloved cats, a duty the world knows as pet-sitting. You might wonder why I, of all people, took on such a role. The truth is, I'd long since made my peace with fear. I state this not with pride, but as a simple fact. That house and I had a history. I'd already experienced a catalog of incidents most would label paranormal or supernatural. Doors clicked shut on their own. In the dead of night, the unmistakable sound of footsteps would echo from the floor above, and sometimes I'd feel the distinct, skin-prickling sensation of being watched, despite the room being utterly empty. Yet these experiences shared a common thread. They were designed to frighten, never to harm. These forces, whatever they were, never caused me any physical or psychological injury. It was merely a game of nerves, like living inside a horror film. And with time, I had become almost accustomed to its peculiar rhythm. My neighbors, blissfully unaware of the house's quirks, trusted me implicitly. They were not only delighted with my care, but also paid me handsomely. For me, the money was more than just currency. It was a token of my financial independence, a means to cover my expenses, and a solid boost to my confidence. So, every time they left for their holidays, I would take their keys and settle in. On one side of the scale was the fear and the mystery, on the other, the financial benefits. It was a bargain any pragmatic person would have struck. I told myself it was only ever for a fortnight, and then life would return to normal. Little did I know that this particular stint would be unlike any other, and would prove to be my last. Life had gifted me a relationship that transcended mere siblinghood. My brother was my truest companion, my protector, and my closest friend. Our bond had been forged and tempered in the difficult environment of our family home. Our parents' attitude made us feel like a burden. Every word was criticized, every move judged. The atmosphere had become a slow-acting poison, seeping into our very beings. Eventually, my brother could no longer endure it. He left one day without any dramatic farewell, leaving only a brief note. "I can't stay anymore. Look after yourself." After he was gone, the silence in our house became my greatest adversary. Every room echoed with his absence. Each evening deepened the void he had left behind. I was plunged into a loneliness I had never before conceived. But whenever I pet-sat at that mysterious house, I would always invite my brother over. It became our sanctuary, a place where we could escape the toxic home environment and exist in our own world. He would arrive tired from his part-time job, yet a faint smile always played on his lips, as if he knew he would find solace within those walls. The 4 cats of the house were silent witnesses to our quiet alliance. The 3 older ones, aged and seemingly laden with wisdom of experience, always carried themselves with an enigmatic dignity. And then there was the little one, merely 3 years old, who seemed the most mysterious in her innocence. They all kept their distance, only approaching at mealtimes, as if bound by some ancient pact. One particular evening my brother came over. We watched an old film we'd loved as children and cooked a meal together, the same dish our mother used to make, though it now lacked its original warmth. When it was time for him to leave, the same old concern clouded his eyes, the one that always urged him to steer clear of the house. "You shouldn't stay here," he said, a nervous tremor in his voice he couldn't quite conceal. "I'll be fine," I said, though a small voice inside me begged to listen to him. "It's only 2 weeks." He walked to the door, turned to look at me, and took a deep breath. "Take care of yourself," he said, and then he was gone, leaving behind the familiar emptiness and a new unsettling anxiety. I lay down to sleep, but rest was miles away. The silence of the house felt heavy, oppressive. I asked myself, was my brother right? Had I made a decision to stay in a place I should have fled? But by then it was too late. The night's mysterious events were about to begin, and they would change my life forever. It was that night that the usual strange occurrences took a dangerous turn. I was lying in bed, eyes open, my body refusing to succumb to sleep. Suddenly, without warning, the room's silence was shattered by the blare of the television. The screen showed random static, like an old radio unable to find a station. My heart hammered against my ribs. I fumbled for the remote, my fingers trembling. The screen went black the moment I pressed the button. But merely 2 seconds later, the same static returned. This time the volume was louder. I turned it off again, and again it happened. When the TV switched on for the 3rd time by itself, I felt it was toying with me. This was no technical glitch. It was the feeling of a presence, an unseen force testing me. I rose from the bed, a shiver running down my spine as my feet touched the floor. I looked at the TV. The blue light from its screen bled into the room, casting everything in a deathly aura. Mustering my courage, I pulled the plug from the socket. As the plug disconnected, the TV died instantly, but the silence that returned was heavier than before. The next evening, as my brother and I were having dinner, a sound cut through our conversation. It was the sound of a small child crying, a wail that held not just innocence, but a profound depth of pain. It was coming from the basement. My brother fell silent, his eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice a mix of dread and a need for confirmation. I let out a shaky breath. "It's probably just one of the cats." "That's not a cat," he insisted, the old worry I'd felt the previous night flashing in his eyes. "That sound, it's human." I tried to rationalize it. "Cats make strange noises sometimes. Remember at Nan's house when we were kids? Her cat used to make those noises at night." But my heart knew this sound was different. It wasn't just a noise. It carried a story, a sorrow that felt decades old. I decided to venture into the basement. My legs felt weak as I descended the stairs. With every step, the crying seemed to grow closer. When I reached the bottom, I saw the little cat, cowering in a corner, her eyes wide with fear. As I picked her up, I could feel her trembling. Back upstairs, I tried to distract the cat with her toys. My brother took my hand and said, "You can't stay here." His voice was urgent. "This isn't a coincidence. First the TV, now these sounds. It's escalating." I looked into his eyes, that same protective look I'd known since childhood. "I'm safe," I said, though my words lacked conviction. "Who can guarantee your safety?" he pleaded, a note of desperation in his voice. "What if something happens? If anything happened to you, I'd never forgive myself." Our discussion ended in a heavy silence. He left, and I knew he was right. And yet I stayed, perhaps out of stubbornness, perhaps to prove I wasn't a girl who scared easily. But that night, as I slept alone in that house, I realized that sometimes fear isn't foolishness, but survival. and the sounds that continued to drift from the basement all night long became a stark reminder of the mistake I should have acknowledged. This was the night all my senses began to betray me. It was the deep, still hours when time seems to stall and the air itself grows quiet. I was tossing in bed when the sound started again. This was not merely crying, it was a summons laden with immense pain and loneliness. With every sob, the voice seemed to grow deeper. I tried to convince myself, it's just the cats, it's only the cats. But my heart rejected the logic. I decided I would uncover the secret. I left the bedroom and searched the entire house. The living room held only empty armchairs, the cushions devoid of any impression. In the bedroom, the sheets were pristine, untouched. The kitchen stood orderly, the pots and pans standing to attention as if no one had gone near them. And still, the sound persisted. Now it seemed to be calling my name, as if something in the basement's darkness was trying to beckon me. My heart wasn't just racing anymore. It felt as if it were trying to escape my chest. I had faced strange events in this house before, but this was different. This wasn't fear. This was terror, the deep, primal kind etched into human DNA. I stepped towards the staircase. The basement door stood ajar as if waiting for me. Placing my first foot on the step felt like stepping into a frozen lake. The air was damp, and a strange smell hung there, of old timber and stagnant water. With each step downward, the crying grew nearer, and a peculiar tingling sensation ran through my body. The moment my foot touched the basement floor, an abrupt silence fell, a silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. I strained my eyes. The basement was swallowed by deep shadows. In front of me was an old cupboard, its door slightly open, and I felt sure something was behind it. Then, suddenly, I felt a breath on the back of my neck. That was the moment my fear turned to pure terror. My body froze, my lips trembled, my hands grew slick with sweat. I fumbled for the light switch, but my fingers felt numb. Then I heard a voice, a whisper in words I couldn't comprehend, yet they burned in my mind like fire. "Don't come here." I decided to run. As I scrambled up the stairs, I felt pursued. With every step, I expected a hand to grab my ankle. When I reached the top, my breath was ragged, and my body was sheened in sweat. And then I saw the sight that stripped me of all my composure. There in the kitchen sat all 4 cats, perfectly serene before their food bowls. They looked at me as if nothing had happened. The smallest one gazed right at me, and in her eyes I saw an intelligence that no ordinary animal should possess. She paused, looked directly at me, and let out a strange sound, exactly like the cry of the weeping child. In that moment I understood these were not cats, or perhaps they were not just cats. They knew the secrets of this house, and perhaps they were part of the secret itself. I saw that their eyes shone brighter than usual, and their movements held a grace that no common pet should possess. That night I knew I wasn't just looking after cats. I was overseeing something I could never understand. And whatever was in the basement wanted to communicate with me, and these cats were its guardians.